criminals who sometimes have records of violence as well as records of fraud. And these links with the criminal underworld mean that there is nothing, I think, that a serious organisation can say when it is alleged that they are operating underhand tactics by using criminal elements. And people will rightly say, how can a reputable news organisation in this country run their affairs by using known criminals to carry out much of the work?
You and your wife Sarah both went to Rebecca Brooks's wedding, and now you're here criticising News International and making allegations regarding their activities against you and your wife. Is this a case of now you're out of office, you don't need them anymore?
It's a case of me not knowing until now and until the evidence being brought to me by work that has been done by investigative journalists telling me what actually was happening. As I said, I've not talked about my son's condition. I've not talked about these things. I now have been given information. The police are obviously looking at some of the information about how this came out, how these things were done, how my bank accounts and my legal affairs and how my property affairs and all that could become public property for no other reason that a newspaper wanted to make some commercial gain or abuse political power in doing so. And now I know that to be the case. It's clear that there are issues that have got to be raised. I did not know the level of criminality involved until now.
Last Friday, David Cameron stood up in the House of Commons and he effectively laid the responsibility at your doorstep. He said that Labour and you, as your job as Prime Minister, hadn't done enough to combat or investigate the phone hacking as it started to emerge. How do you react to that?
I think that's completely wrong. I think the records will show, and perhaps it's something I've got to talk about later, is that not only did we stand up against the commercial ambitions of News International and make it clear that the public interest was to dominate how we made decisions in government, no matter what they said, no matter what they wanted, but also at the same time we were very clear that if allegations of wrongdoing were proven, action should be taken. And I think the record will show that against the advice of the police, against the advice of the Home Office, against the advice of the Cabinet Office, against the advice, in a way, of the Select Committee who hadn't asked for it, I wanted a judicial inquiry some months ago, before I left office, into the workings of the News International. Did
you at all contact Gus O'Donnell or anyone asking for a public inquiry? What action did you take to proactively try and investigate?
Well, I think the record will show that once the Select Committee reported, it was very clear to me that there were questions that remain unanswered. They talked about the deliberate obfuscation of News International. They talked about the number of people targeted being far greater than the number of people who'd been named. They talked about all these issues, but they hadn't been able to reach a conclusion. I came to the conclusion that the evidence was becoming now so overwhelming about the underhand tactics of News International. I didn't know about all the illegality at that time, but the underhand tactics of News International in using these private investigators to trawl into people's private lives, particularly the lives of people who were completely innocent, completely defenceless, that we had to have a judicial inquiry. That was my view. At the time, however, there was very few people who accepted that this was the right thing to do.
How big a scandal is this for our political system, our media, and the lives of normal people?
My view is that comes in different times big questions that are going to be confronted by the public and by the political system of a country. And it's pretty clear to me that not only are people utterly defenceless against some of the tactics that have been used by some of the newspapers that are linked to the News International stable and perhaps wider, but also that the level of criminality involved, which is going to be exposed, meant that there were links between that newspaper and that group of newspapers and well-known criminals in this country. And if that is the case, then we have a duty to clean this up entirely. I tried in government to do the best that I could to have a totally clean relationship with these newspapers. No quarter given, no private deals, nothing.